what do you do if you're in this situation? How does an attorney help you?
Okay. Yeah. So that's a great question. And so an attorney has a lot of things that they could do. There's a lot of tools in their chest. Number one, and again, not specific legal advice, but this is something that, most attorneys would want to try to do. Number one, when somebody's making a demand, like a minority shareholders asking their partners for something, or their, the other owners of the company, when they're asking for something and they're asking for it informally, it falls on deaf ears a lot. So number one, having a lawyer send a letter and making it official and saying, hey, pursuant to whatever rule, this is the information I'm asking for, and your conduct constitutes minority shareholder oppression. Putting that in writing a lot of times to people at least gets the ball rolling. Right?
It just adds weight, right, to what you're doing.
Of course.
And the second you use that word pursuant, I feel like people immediately just drop
sure.
there.
Yeah. The pursuant is the thing.
Just a jab to the nose with pursuant.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then so that's the first thing, right? The second thing is if you're not getting anywhere, like let's say you send a letter and they just ignore it, right?
Sure.
They just don't do anything. Well, like I said earlier, you have the ability to just go to the court to ask for certain records, right? When you do that, again, that perks people's ears up because now they have to respond. They have to hire a lawyer. They got to do something, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they don't do something, again, problem, right?
And just really quick, not to go too far into this, what is that problem? Like, what's the recourse? I ignore this. It goes to the courts. The courts rule, like, are they starting to garnish wages? Is there, like, what happens in that situation if I just choose to ignore this problem?
You're getting ahead of me.
Okay.
Let's go to the records for a second, right?
So,
Let's say I get the records. Now there's a court order that makes you give me the records, right? And if you don't give me the records, I could hold you in contempt of court, right? And so it escalates a lot more than a business owner might want, especially if you think that maybe you're in the right as the majority, right? The third thing that you can do, and this is, in extreme cases, is let's say they stop paying you your salary, but they're paying themselves a salary. They locked you out of the business just altogether, right? They turned off your email, they turned off your access to the servers, whatever it may be. You could go and ask for what's called injunctive relief, right? And injunctive relief is a complicated concept, but it really basically says, dear court, I want you to keep things as they are while we resolve our dispute, right?
Got it.
And so what you want to go in and say is hey, until they started oppressing me, I was getting a $60,000 a year salary. I had access to the emails. I had access to, what the business was doing, to the records, things
going
like that.
Going to meetings, all those different things, right?
And they've cut me out of all that. And so I want to sue them for doing that, but while I sue them for doing that, I want an injunction. And that means essentially a restraining order, for lack of a better word, to put me back where I was, right? And so I want my $60,000 a year salary restored. I want my access restored. And a lot of times if you're doing that early on, and most people don't do that early on because they don't go to a lawyer, they kind of fight for a while,
right?
And they get locked into their position. But if you're doing that early on, what that does is it signals to those other people that, hey, this isn't going to fly, right? And if you have a court agree with you early, it so often helps resolve the case, right? So if I go in for an injunction and I get the injunction and the court says, hey, he's right, she's right, put him back in, give them the access, pay them their wages, whatever it may be, all of a sudden they're like, hey, maybe what we're doing is not okay. And that helps resolve the case. And people don't do that. People a lot of times will, get into the weeds, start spending a ton of money on lawyers and really kind of just like battling about every nitty gritty thing. But sometimes what you want to do is approach these kinds of situations with strategy.